she had her big long list of a wish list, which is like 8 pages. And we got through part of that. But the important is we're kind of like bringing her along along in the design process and making sure that everything we're doing on this, I think it's 10 acres, very nice piece of property, but we're still in the concept stage after, 3 or 4 months, just because of all her life, everything going on, and not everything goes very quickly with the design work. It's not, that's why you have hopefully a bunch of them going at the same time. But it really was important for her and also for us. And I want to kind of emphasize that, because I know that we've been seeing, like with Joshua's work and Yao's work and a few others, is that it's like whatever you see from people, like even in the WhatsApp, it's like right into the design phase, phase 3, right? And I think what we need to do is spend more time on the concept phase, is just basically remember those bubbles. This is the functional space. This is the functional space. And that's just basic landscape, architectural design, process, bubble mapping, functional spaces before you do anything, to really decide what's going here, what is its function. And that really makes it easy for the client, because it brings them along through the process rather than hitting them in the face with this big long thing that needs to be explained and they can't read the symbols and they don't know what it was all about. But if they start from the empty space, and then gradually you're kind of filling it in, the education part for them and the buy-in is so much better, and they really appreciate it. So, and it was funny yesterday, and I told Val, it was kind of strange, but we're on Illustrator, and in Zoom, I gave remote control to the client with the pen, if you can imagine. And I was kind of laughing, and Val too, I said, okay, we're gonna see how this goes. This is like against all laws of any kind of client service. You never give the client the pencil. But since she's telling us a lot of stuff and she wants to draw it, and she just had a gas, right? I mean, just enjoying that. And all I gave her was the pencil with a black line. That's all she got. But she's like, okay, this here, catalpa here. I like this area. So she's actually drawing the bubbles for us of where she would like things relative to the design we've already worked on. But she's like drawing all these ideas in, and then I'm saying, oh, okay, that's really cool. But remember, we need to get access from A to B. And she's like, oh, you're right. And then she's like, that's right, we got to do this. And so it's like so much fun because she's part of the process. And I thought that was just great. And if you're going to educate the client, right, and they get to draw, hopefully that won't happen too often, that just all of a sudden they understand the complexity of what we're looking at here, right? And they have, it's on Grand Junction, 9 inches of rain a year, maybe, hugely dry, hugely hot. And they have this island out in the front of the cul-de-sac that's just, your typical Brad Lancaster oven sort of baked area where they want to grow plants. And so we were talking about that a lot, about what's going on there. And she's kind of understanding, I see. And she'd like to do pinyon pine out there. Oh, I love nuts. I like, pine nuts. I'd like to have those. And so we had a kind of a conversation about, that's cool. They take about 8 to 12 years or longer before they actually fruit. And so either that or you're going to, so we're kind of filling her in on the process of expectations of what it takes, the time it takes to get all these things going. But if you're going to be there, like she says, this is my last house, I'm never going to move, blah, blah, blah. This is where I'm staying, which of course we've all heard that before. It's great. But again, it was like the long-term process of doing the design, and it was really fun to do that with her. So I just wanted to talk about that. So either way, however any of us have jumped ahead on things, because it's really fun to start putting in plants, you got to turn off that plant layer and you got to go in and do those bubbles and make sure that you have access, right? And you have water. So all those bubbles need to have paths in between them or through them. And all of them need to have some kind of access to water, whether it's a swale, irrigation, a spigot, a pipe, whatever it might be, drain tile coming from the roof line, all those kinds of things. And all that stuff has to be first, because everything has to go around that. In the 2-tree exercise, and Getting quite a few of those coming in. A few people haven't done it yet, but invariably everybody forgets about the path. And that's the first thing in the instructions is draw a path to access the thing. And all you get is a bunch of plants because everybody, you go right to that. But remember, you got to get the spaces. And if you can't get there, what's the point, right? And then especially with that one, if you're going to have strawberries and cut flowers and things like that, the path is very important, where that is, in order to guide where the plants are going and also to have access to all that stuff. So that's my thought on that. Really important to me, and playing around and kind of jumping ahead is good, but every time to back up and really do the spaces and think about the water and all these things, just like everybody is basically forced to. And I'm not an architect and I'm not an engineer, but I've been in those kinds of meetings and they all talk about, what is the goal? What do we need this thing to do? What are our resources? All that kind of stuff before they even get into anything else, And then the fun stuff is to do the math and do the engineering and try to get things to be placed in there, but you really have to start from the front. All right. And did everybody get that file? Were you able to open that file in Illustrator? Great. Well, we have a small crowd this morning. That's fine. Maybe other people come in. We'll record it for them. But what I want to do now is open that file and I'll share a screen. And this gets kind of tough if you have a small screen. But I want to go through some of the steps on this type of, for where I live, a rather typical, 40 acres or 80 acres or whatever that is on there. I think it's about, I think it's 80 acres. But anyway, of the process of doing this, and it doesn't matter size, urban, broadacre, or whatever, it's really important in the base mapping to identify these spaces, these plant communities, all those kinds of things. So if you have any issues with opening it up or anything in there, let me know. I'm going to give you a little tour. And if you can put me up in a corner or however that's going to work and you can see what you're working on, that's fine too. Let's see. So I'm going to share a screen. There we go. It's off. And what you have, let's get in here. Once you open this up, this is already scaled in. The aerial's already scaled in. I believe this was from the drone at that time, pretty sure it was. And so, so, and I even have a scale bar in here, that's in there. I'll zoom in on this. This is, oh yeah, this is from the county. So this is the county plat. I can tell from the resolution, it's not the great one that's in here. But that's fine. This is prior to when we did the drone work. So I have the scale bar in here already, and this line across the front is 1,300 feet. I need to know that because that's how I'm going to measure my scale and get all that stuff in there. But look at this. It's pretty amazing landscape when you consider this basic farm area and how much of it is actually used and how much of it is not. And for a lot of it looks like it hasn't been for many, many decades. What we do know about this preliminarily is the fact that this kind of wetland area, this is where all the farmers drain their water into when they're trying to drain their fields. So whatever this might have been many years ago, it has a lot more water now than it used to. And so it has created a huge amount of variable habitat with that. And that's what we need to really isolate and to, when we start building our map here. So you see over here, I'm going to turn off notes. There's no concept. The scale is in the bottom there. That's, and by the way, I put a new scale bar in the symbol libraries for scales. Shorter, smaller, and also one with thinner lines, because as things would blow up, it was a little bit harder to read. In this example, of course, because you have such a large area, you know, you need the scale needs to be a little bolder and a decent size so that when it goes into the title block, you can still read it, because this is not going to be magnified much at all. It's probably going to be reduced quite a bit. So our base map layers in here, we have utility lines, property lines. Let's see here. Plants, buildings, access, right? We have all of that. A couple things I left in here for you. So when we zoom into this corner, which I'm going to do, if you go to base map, you can see that the property line path is already there. So I left that in as an example. And if you click on the eye, it opens up and now you can see it on the screen. So right in your layers, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth thing is base map. Inside that is utility lines and then property line. And when we're doing these things, even the property line probably needs to change and flex relative to the size of the property. So this is a fairly thin line relative to, you know, being on 80 acres. Obviously, if this was a 1 acre lot, say if that little field is that, this property line would be way too thick and way too big once you brought it into the title block. So those things change. But I wanted to put that in here. And if we go into, I gotta move this window around. If I go into the strokes, I can see that it's actually, I'm in centimeters, of course, because that's what Adobe's doing to me. And then you can see the dash lines here also. So that's our typical dash line from the key, 2 dots and a dash going around for that. So that's on, and that's already there. And of course, if I have the property line, it's where I want it. I'm going to lock that, shut it. I'm done with that. Property line is done. If I ever need, of course, to work around it without seeing it, I can always turn it off. It also is hiding these lines, and this is the from the plat map from the county. That's their lot lines in there, which are great to have, as accurate as hopefully they are. And we've got that marked on here. The other thing I have on your left on here, if you go down to water, under measurements in the layers is water. And all that is, I'm going to zoom here, this little wetland area. I have in here wetland, right? And there's the path. And all I did was highlight that. And it's so easy to do it. Look how you can actually recognize a lot on here on the landscape, if you're familiar, of course, with these landscapes. But this is a wetland. Look at all the algae growing in the open water, and all probably cattails, phragmites, all sorts of things around this. So that is a true wetland space. And so I'm in my wetland layer. I'm in water. I probably added that. And again, that's as simple as, if I click on this now, let's see, I'm going to open that up again. If I click on that and turn it on, of course, now my pencil sees it's that green. And that's off of foliage. I'm going to turn it off, but the way that's made, of course, I'm in my wetland layers. I'm just taking my pencil and I'm just following the edge of the wetland, going around. And you can see where the water probably comes in from a creek, just like that. And my green is over here in my swatches, and I can make that green and then knock it down with transparency to get it down. We don't want this, we don't need that much color here because we're going to have our reduced transparency aerial anyway, eventually, right? So that's the wetland, and that's marked. And they have all sorts of spaces like that. Can you see this here? This is like open field, kind of grassland. Here you have more wetland. You can tell from the texture, of course, this is low resolution, you know, a very damp area. And so we have all these gradients in here. This could be called marsh or wetland. This would be a wetland because there's water here. This could be more of a meadow. Until we get there, but you can see there's like an old building or something here, and the trees that are here, right? You might have tamarack and you see the poplar or the birch trees, growing around the water. So already we're just looking at the foliage, we're looking at the trees. That's telling us what's going on, right? In this area, you have, I think there are a lot of pine trees and different things growing in here. So you can tell that's solid soil, because you're not going to see it over in the marsh, right? It's too wet over here. But you do see the change in plants, right? You can see the grasses, you can see the darkness. There's a lot of patterns in here, and pattern recognition, of course, is big for us. So if I'm working in the wetland layer again, right, I'm going to take my pencil and I'm just going to do right around the edges to highlight that space. And I can even go down here, and if I use the eyedropper, I just click on the other one, and now it creates that and copies over that space. So that is the process of going through this entire piece of land. I'm going to turn off the aerial. See, I have my 100% and my 20%. You should have that too. And you can see how this green is popping a little bit more. And as I start to fill all these things in, more and more of the green is going to come through, and I can see all of these spaces, and I can get all of my wetlands marked on here for habitat space. I might go in here also, and you can tell from the colors, and we'll look at it closer, you know, this is a different sort of ecology in there, and I might change that to a different color. So as you're working on these larger lands, the canopy and the different plant communities that are on here are the first thing you want to isolate. And look at all of these different spaces, right? We are basically bubble mapping the ecology that's on this land. Look at all the patchwork. I mean, this is amazing. I was just amazed when I saw this place. You go up and look at all the different spaces, what's going on, right? But you can see what the little kind of the flow of the water coming through. There's open water in some areas. There's areas that look like maybe it's an animal path going across here, maybe from the winter. Look at that one here. So look at that. You can see another animal path from the deer, the coyotes, whatever. Probably more animals than humans doing that. And you can see all of this in the center of a wetland. What would that be? Well, that's probably tamarack. You'd have to go and see, but even from the different colors of the trees, you can tell. Poplar and birch, tamarack in the middle of this wetland, probably a floating bog perhaps. And then these are green over here. And we'll stop here in a little bit, but look at the time of year this is also. This is also called leaf off, most likely. They do leaf off and leaf on. If they have good money for good aerials in some areas, they'll do it twice a year. So this is probably late spring, or it might be in the fall. Hard to tell. It looks like it's springtime just to look at the field, the brownness of all these grasses, things like that. So all of the evergreens are still green. All the deciduous trees have lost their leaves. What's great about that is now we can zoom in on these things and we can see all the birch trees, right? All the evergreen trees in here. The birch trees show up really well. And so as we're doing our canopy, and you might think it gets kind of tough, but look at all the centers of these. You can see almost the center of each one of these trees where the branches come out. And that's where we can start our canopy and start doing our canopy work on this. Let's see here. So we have plants, hardscapes, property lines. Here's existing vegetation, canopy, shrubs, turf, and ground cover. And we might want to add in here fields, things like that. Looking good. So we might add another layer to this, which is very easy. Just click the plus on the bottom of that. I'm going to call that ag fields. And when I'm in ag fields, I'm just going to grab my pencil again and follow all along the edge of this field. And then I can come back. Now it's in here. There's the path. And I can fill that in with foliage. You know, maybe I'll make it a brown, something like that, and then give it some transparency. And that's how I'm getting started with these areas, right? Just giving it some tone. It's all I want to do. So all of these spaces now are much easier defined when we come in and we're looking at our base map. See how the colors are starting to come in? It's spaces and ecology, because each one of these things, especially in a natural environment, is going to be a functional space, especially when it's about ecology. And I'll turn this back on. Any questions on that so far? Just want to make sure everybody's got this open. Any issues with your layers, how this appears on your screen?
Sorry, with the pen tool, do you does it actually snap to the edge?
No, I'm using the pencil. Now there is a smart tool. Let's see, I get it back on here. You know, Photoshop has that. There's a smart pen also. I tend not to use it. That will follow the edge of the change in contrast, right? It's like when you want to go around a building, it will basically, the smart tool will actually find the edge for you and do that. I tend not to use that because most likely it makes it really kind of rough, and I'd rather just have a nice smooth line from my pencil. And this is the pencil tool, by the way, not the pen tool, right? And you can see how it smooths it out nicely. So. Yeah, and we don't need to have the infinite perimeter that this would actually be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So that's the pencil tool. So right now you can see this. If you do the, I'll open up my artboard here. See how my artboard is right around my design. I should ask as a point of order, are we having any lag time as far as how I talk and how things appear on your screen? Is it delayed at all?
Not that I can see.
No? Okay. Great.
Yeah, no.
Good, good.
For me, yes, I've been pinging you.
Oh, okay. Is it long? 5 seconds, 10 seconds? What do you think?
5 maybe.
Really? Okay.
3.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I have so many things open on this. I didn't see the chat window. Sorry, Michael. Okay, so first task. This is open, right? We have existing vegetation. We're going to use that space or water. And all I want you to do is highlight that, turn on the pen tool, and make some curves and shapes around these different, like this area here, the island there. This is a wetland here. See where the grasses are? It might also be marsh. There's all sorts of variations in that. In that case, I'm going to click on water, and then I'm going to do this marsh area. If I want to go back to like seeing this little tamarack, I know that because I've been there too. That would be existing vegetation. And I'm just going to draw a nice circle around that. And then you can see the pencil has a little circle next to it. That means it's closed. And I have that one in there too. Now, these are the general areas of space, right? All of these, it makes for a very nice map later on because you have all these ecologies, all these different areas marked on your map. And very helpful when you're considering these spaces because they all kind of need to be understood in layers, and it gives you a very idea of the different types of habitat in this area too. So again, I'm on existing vegetation, and I'm just going to go around this area here. It looks very marshy. I'm even going to go outside the property line, follow this all around until I get back to the line. and that's filled in too. Give that a little color, or maybe I'll just use my eyedropper and make it the same as this field. Give it some brown because it's grassy, it's marshy, and I can always change the color later. And it's always good too then to also get to my layers here. Every once in a while, just turn off the 100% and look at that 20% aerial, and then you can see how your shapes are kind of coming in on here. So let's do a few of those for the next 5-7 minutes. Just take your pen tool, and all you have to do are the shapes. If it's a little bit hard to see what you're doing, you can always use the 20%. You can still see the shapes in here, and sometimes it's a little easier to draw when it's screened back so far. And of course, you can zoom in also on all of these. It makes it, remember, sometimes we have a much bigger screen. We don't have to be working on a postage stamp. So if you come into an area that's got a lot of detail, maybe you want to zoom in. And then you can, zoom is Z and N is pencil. And then you can go back, grab the pencil, and then come around and do your perimeter again. Obviously, the more zoomed in, the more detail you can put in there. If you want to see something interesting too, is I have this, I did my line around here. And if I use the eyedropper, I can pick up a color anywhere on the map itself, which is kind of neat. I can actually use the real tone that's in that area, which makes a lot of sense. You know, I probably don't want to use the tone from evergreen trees or the dark grass marsh, but I want to use the tone from the grassy marsh that I'm in. And then of course, just knock it down a little bit for transparency.
How much do you like to knock it down before you then make it transparent?
Right, so let's see, I'll do this one here. I'm just going to grab some tone off to the side for that one. Not really, yeah, kind of a lighter color. And then you just kind of drag it down until, you don't want it to disappear, of course, where it just adds a hue. 16 to 20%, I think is pretty much average. Yeah, this one was 35% in the center here. The nice thing is, once I have that marsh done and I picked it out, like say this one here, if I have another one I want to do that's very similar down here, I can draw my circle and then use the eyedropper and just copy that. So it's like you have your own palette of colors in your design already. So you can use the eyedropper and just basically look for similar spaces and then use the pencil and then the eyedropper to use the same treatment, the same characteristics, basically. Now, in some cases, you might have to, like you have circles inside of circles, right? A lot of these are like the big marshland here. Wetland sort of space has an island in the middle of it of tamarack. So if I use my eyedropper, make that green, the only thing I want to remember is that I do want, let's say, the island to be on top. So I can go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back. And then the trees will be in the front, the top layer in that. But that's a nice, right? That's a nice, a very nice combination then. That works well. So in a sense, what you're doing is just like try to select a lot of the same thing. Like I'm just going to do the grassy areas. Just get all my grassy areas outlined. And then go back and create, yeah, that one's in there. Oops. Put the colors in. So I'm just highlighting that grassy area with the cursor, and then I'm clicking on that other grassland to use the color from that. That works out pretty good. Now you can imagine how many different types of habitat, wetland, ecological systems there are going on in this land. There's a huge amount of diversity in an area that hasn't been touched for a long time. You could even see, look, and on mine here, if you go, or you go to the top of your page, look at how the trees transition across the landscape. Even within those islands of moisture, of soil, all of a sudden there's an edge of poplar, and then it goes right into, maybe it's oak, maple, whatever is in here. Some pretty big trees. And then it goes right back where it gets wet again. And you see a few evergreen trees, really tall. They had some white cedar or white pine, amazing on this land. And you see some other evergreens, and it just fades into that over here. And you can't even see the ground there. So I see I have that one. And if I turn off my 100% and use the 20%, of course, that tells me where my other artwork is that I've already started. Oh, I got a couple. Here's a little mistake where, let's see, let me grab that. Yeah, you can see where this errant end of a line here, they actually don't match. So I want to get these, get that straightened out. Get rid of some lines. Oops. There we go. But I see in my 100%, When you see a change in the landscape, that's worthy of a change in the color and the shape. It's another system in here. No, so one of the reasons that this is a really good skill at any scale is because a lot of people right now are buying land and wanting to create some kind of holistic, self-sustaining landscape. And if you're going to do that, you need to really know what all of these different areas are on the land and what they can provide. And in this case, we called this the Botanical Preserve. They had a small area of agriculture, a couple small fields on the south, some garden areas in front of the house. And the rest of this, the intention, the goal is to make this a foraging landscape of edible plants. And the final design was each one of these areas, as you can imagine, each one of this in this mosaic of ecological conditions has a whole different set of plants. Right? There were wild cranberries growing in the bogs. Boom. What does that tell us? So many different other things we can put in there. There were service berries, amelanchier on the edges over here. There was some wild ferns and all sorts of, so each one of those plants in the landscape is giving us a clue as to what that palette of plants could be in that area. And so we're dividing up this property into all these basic production areas, you might say, right? So each one of these spaces has to be treated differently because of the hydrology, the plants that are there, the soil that's there. And that means there can be a lot of different things growing on this land. Very valuable piece of land for somebody that has, you know, that kind of idea of what they'd like to do. Most people would see this land and have no clue what to do with it and just leave it as it is, which is fine and probably preferred for the most part. But other people might find it and go, wow, this could be an amazing place to grow food without, you know, damaging it, kind of living with the property, living with the land. So what are our struggles here? How are people doing? Are you getting something that looks like this? To my people. Here we go. Anybody willing to share a screen?
No. Can I ask something? I managed to arrive to download it and mark, but I cannot close I mark the area, but it doesn't close, it disappears. So just forgive me, I'm in the very beginning of Illustrator. Certain things come so easy, certain things I can't do it. So why it doesn't close?
So if you're on, let's say I'm going to do it over here on the side. If there's nothing in this palette space,
yes,
if I draw a line like this,
right,
and then it disappears, that's because there's no characteristics to it. So I have to actually give it a line. I have to give it color. So even though it closed, if it seems like it disappeared, you can click on it. And if it shows up, that's the time to put some color in it, or click on another space where you can choose what kind of, color you want it to be at that point. It is very difficult with this because of all the color and all the detail when you're working the pen. It's hard to find that last point. Okay, where did I start this?
But I press enter to close it and doesn't. I thought that when you are close to close, you press enter, so then automatically it should close, like in Photoshop. So here I'm doing something, I'm closing.
Yeah,
It
that's
disappears.
not how it works in Illustrator. We don't really use the
No?
keys for things like that.
Okay,
So you
but
have to wait, see if you watch my pencil
yes,
and you get the circle, you're close enough. It will close it for you.
it does, it disappears. That's exactly what something and
Mm.
I am here on the appropriate, I think so, the
Mhm.
workplace. I have the essential classic there, and I don't have all the layers that you have.
Yeah, you should have all those layers.
Let me work on it. I don't want to spend time on it, but I'm mesmerized by the subject. That's more important, that I get that.
Right. So first of all, also remember that this aerial picture is locked. So it's not going to move. After you have your paths in, maybe you want to lock those two. But at any time, you can do that. You can do a box with the white cursor. Like if I lost that, all I have to do is do a cursor over that area. Oh, there it is. And it'll pop up again. Or click in the general area
Okay,
and it
maybe
will show
that.
up again. Yeah, it's still there. It just doesn't have any characteristics. It's not defined.
Okay.
So it kind of blends into the background.
Huh. Let me get something with this. I should have the layers. But anyway, but so I can see why you spent that's the client that you talk 2 hours at a time. That's
Yeah,
what an education.
it is. And I have to say too, and actually, Mike Lynn is right now going out to see one of our clients. I think it's in West Virginia, a prospect, right? We had a lead, it's a prospect. And he's going to meet the guy. The guy's kind of been hesitant to move forward. And I asked Mike if he would go out to see him because he only lives like about a half hour away. Sure, totally speculative. But the benefit of doing that is to get your vocabulary and practice talking to people, get your script, all those kinds of things. And if you can imagine, like with Val and Brandon and I, and we're doing these concept meetings with the client, is that a huge amount of that repeats, right? The process repeats, the concept repeats, the ideas that we're going forward repeats. The only thing is different is our strategy and talking about other details that are important to them. But just like doing this work, right? Every time I do this, I get better, I get faster, right? And so the conversations with people on concepting, it really solidifies in your head where they're at, it gets their energy up, and it also helps me build that vocabulary of words. And a cheat sheet is not a bad idea, but keeping in mind that you're trying to build that library of things to think about and depth of understanding so that you can, bring them along in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concepting discussions and then doing this really helps. Now I'm going to shut both of my vegetation off. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my screen right now. But just what happens too is we're doing our bubble maps on the 100%, it really enhances these areas also. A little browner, a little greener, right? When you turn our vegetation layer on and off to kind of help define those spaces. And then as I turn off the 100% one, I can actually see these, right? These different areas that I want to work with. So by the time you get done, does everything need to be mapped out on here? It doesn't have to be. Do all these lines need to match up and be exactly next to each other? No, and it's, getting them in close is nice, as close as you can, that kind of finesse, very helpful. But there are a lot of other things that we're going to put on here that are going to define these spaces too. So I'm back on vegetation. I'm turning off my 100%. I just want to see what areas I have left on here that I might want to define. Let's see, we got a little wetland space there. And the only thing really I can see when I'm doing this a lot of time is just the pencil and the little circle when I get back to where I want to be. In the lower right corner, look at that ditch. That ditch looks like there's kind of a marsh in the lower southeast corner. So I'm going to do that one. And I'm going to make that same sort of green I'm using with the marsh. So it's kind of identifying all these things the same way. I have this agricultural field. And there's a little one in the southwest corner. So I'm going to do that one too. And then use the eyedropper and use that same color. Just like that.
Sorry, Dan, can I ask, where did you find the color again? If you want to use the colors off of the picture instead of making your own going in?
Right. Actually, if you use the eyedropper,
Uh-huh.
like if I select this, I'm going to unlock these here. If I select any shape and I use the eyedropper, I can click anywhere on this picture and it will use the tone in the background.
Okay, got it. Cool.
Yeah. So what I like to do is basically click on the space I'm using and use that tone and maybe enhance it a little bit.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Sure. And as you kind of see, I don't have that many different colors. You can see it's just different shades of brown and green relative to grass, the fields. And then probably if this field was full of alfalfa, I might make it green, but because it's between seasons, I have it brown. So it might even be better that I change that agricultural field to more of a green. All right, get rid of that one. You know, it's funny when I turn on the full 100% aerial or the 20% aerial, it's almost like I used to work, if back in pencil day, you'd be working with tracing paper and you'd be tracing a picture and flipping the tissue back and forth to make sure you're seeing what's underneath it as you draw on your paper on top.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like that, is like I'm screening it back, or I'm using the 20% aerial to see how it looks. And then I'm going back to the 100% to actually see the area that I'm trying to basically interpret with these two. So I'm still in vegetation. I see a couple other marshy areas. Get those marked in here. Right. Okay. So let's get a little feedback here. Let's see here. And I don't want to, I'm going to make a save as. I don't want to overwrite my original copy. So this would be a good time to do a save as. Save it in a design folder wherever you're working. So how is everybody doing? Do you have something similar to this? Generally from function, generally from spaces? And I'm going to have to start calling on people. Anyone? Anyone? What is the?
Yeah,
what is the
sorry,
what
Dan,
is
I was
it?
just going to type something.
Yeah.
I'm on hotspot from my phone and 10 times and I came late anyway, so I haven't really been able to do anything.
Oh, okay.
Michael.
You're just feeling it. Yeah.
I'm
right.
so upset because my
Oh, you're breaking up, yeah, and we lost you earlier and you had to let you back in too, so that's too bad with that. Okay. So you can see on the screen here, this is what we're kind of going for, is just trying to highlight all those different areas, different types of things. And once we have that, you know, fairly done, I'm going to do a couple of them, kind of, you know, I can see tree canopy changes, pretty consistent. Just going to go around and grab all of that. Okay. So we're going to take 5-minute break. And then we're going to come back and do trees. So now that we have our spaces, kind of our ecological spaces coming in here, now we're going to come back and do the canopy. So we're going to lock that existing vegetation. Believe what happened. Oh, and then we're going to go up to plants. Let me make sure I got all my layers in here. Yep.
Dan, can I ask you a quick question before we go, so I can maybe advance something?
Sure.
I downloaded that, and all the layers are actually in my file, but it blank. I don't know why they don't show for me to download. I have them in my file, but in white. I don't know if I can explain
Well,
that.
if you see, let's see if I can change my options here. Panel options, large, other. Sometimes I can make those pretty big. Here we go.
I couldn't download the layers. I have the big picture, but not the layers.
Well, the
I
layers
have
should be there. Yeah, if you're opening it up in
That's what I have.
Illustrator.
Yeah, I am opening the
Yeah.
Illustrator, the big picture. I have the.
Oops.
And then you have to turn on your layers, right?
Yeah.
How
Wait,
do-
are your layers turned
right.
on?
So do you have this menu right there?
I have. That's what I don't understand, how it's possible to not to have them.
Oops. So these layers, they're in there in the file. Yeah.
Yes, I have a whole list, but they don't download on my Illustrator. I have them in the file. Anyway, okay. I will be better after the 5 days workshop.
Are you doing
But-
the workshop? I want to do the workshop. Dan, excuse me, Dan.
Yeah.
Existing vegetation, the existing vegetation layers, it's canopy, shrubs, and turf, right? That's all there's there, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's turf. There's canopy. Right. And now
Shrubs.
a little housekeeping on this. And now that I made my thing really big, it's hard for me to. I'm gonna turn off these, make this smaller. So these are all, when I start putting in there, these are actually kind of groups that are ready to go. Ag fields in there, canopy. So the next thing we're gonna do is canopy.
And then everything else you just added when you were drawing, right? All those other
Yeah, exactly. So if I want to now, like, I want to get these all, like, get all of these ag fields, existing vegetation. I might want to put those into a group, but existing vegetation is already a group for that. But later on, I might want to come back and put these in a group by themselves as these patches. By the way, there's even in more infinite detail, but this is called patch dynamics in forest ecology, is all the different plant communities and how they tend to grow in groups and patch it out. And you can, if you Google patch dynamics in forestry, you can see all these really cool patterns that they see in the species of plants and how they spread themselves out or collect together in little groups. It's kind of neat. If I have all these spread out here, in my layers, like these are all the ones I just did. And if I click on one and make it blue, and I click on another line with the shift key, now they're all blue. I can go up to the top and say collect a new layer. Oh, sorry, I gotta unlock it. There we go, makes sense. Collect a new layer, and there we go. So now all of those things are together like a group. And I'm just gonna call it patches.
And it's not as spelling, and it's not as busy, right? You don't have like 38
Right.
different things.
I need to clean up my layers here so it's easier for me to work, and I'm just gonna call that patches. And I'll probably do the same thing with canopy. Shrubs, not so much, but canopy for sure. Because we're basically going, guess what, we're going from patterns to details, right? Basic home grid stuff. What are our patterns on the land? And now we're do canopy. And okay, now we're gonna take 5 minutes.
Hey Dan,
Yeah.
can I stay on and maybe get caught up a little bit? Just do one or two like outlines. Is that okay with you? Or
Oh,
do you
yeah,
need to
yeah,
take
yeah.
a break?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to
Thank
go
you.
away.
Okay, so everybody else can. So is it okay if I share with you and maybe just direct me for a couple of minutes? Is that okay?
Sure, I'll stop my share.
And I came late to the party.
I'm sorry,
But
but
I'm
you're in Florida, so
I
your own party going on.
wish. Right, where are you? No. Oh, that's it, right? Pencil tool, right? I got it, right?
Pencil.
that-
Actually, it's the N key. Well, that's the pencil, yeah.
Yep. So I'm gonna try and do what you did, just do one of these, right? Just trace?
Yeah,
Or,
click on the well, got to click on the right layer, which is existing vegetation. Get that highlighted.
oh,
Yep.
it's changed to the, is that
Oh,
the
why
right
did-
one?
Yeah, why did it do that? Do the N key. Just press the N key. There you go.
See, my machine is always doing stuff like this, and I can never figure it out why.
There you go. Yeah. You're not doing this on your phone, are you?
No, what I've done is you can, what do they call that? You can,
Oh, hotspot?
hotspot, yeah, so I keep getting dropped and blah, 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 and like 10 times, so. But I can't make classes, I'm addicted. So, and I was supposed to, I'm at this house and the internet was supposed to be set up when it wasn't. I was going crazy this morning and calling people and, okay, so not so good. If I wanted to straighten her out here, I would just click and drag.
No, you got to use the white cursor.
Or is that
Double click on a point.
okay?
That's the A key, by the way.
No, I just move that.
Oh, you wanted to add a point or you want to just move it?
Is that good? I was just gonna, because I kind of went too far. I was gonna try and drag it out.
So double click on one of those
But the-
points on the side.
Oh, it's gonna be one of these?
Not on a
There's no
path,
point here.
on a point. Yeah, that one. Double click on the one below.
Oh, no, we're gonna
It's
control
got to be on, there you got the handles. Now just pull that top handle to the right
Sorry, I just controlled Z on that. So I can just double click here, right? Sorry, Dan.
on the point.
When you say point here,
Yep.
double click. Oh, and then handles come.
Yeah, and the bottom handle goes left and the top handle goes right, and yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, better.
Much
A little
better.
bit.
And you can go outside the lines, by the way. You don't have to stay, and I actually recommend going outside the property lines if it's where the plants are going. Right.
That's good enough, right? And then I can do get the shade now. Do the
Yeah, actually it's press the I key for the eyedropper. And then click anywhere on whatever color you want to use off of your picture.
what do you guys use? This?
Yeah, the brown.
Okay.
And then you might have to do a little, oh, that looks pretty good. Yeah, a little transparency maybe, but it looks good.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. And by the way, I'm using a pencil, actual, a pen for the pad. Much easier to do this with that. A little bit harder to do with a mouse. Extremely hard to do
Yeah.
with a trackpad.
Yeah. The mouse
Just
is.
too many finger movements on a trackpad to really try and be accurate.
Did I lose? Sorry, did I lose this?
No, it's still there.
And the color's still there? Is it?
Yep. Mhm. Oh, now it's gone.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Control
So you
Z.
can actually click on the field itself and you would get that tone. And it actually, by the way, it's taking the tone of the real picture, not the screened back one. So it's actually grabbing the color as if this was at 100%. So any kind of brown, whatever
So
you
we
want to
went
grab
right.
off of there. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
Now to get out of this, I just double click here, right? Should I just, and it will get rid of the pen? All right, let's go here.
Well, press a key
Okay.
or whatever. Yeah.
All right, so I've got one. So I can draw again. Well, nobody's back yet, are they?
Yeah, let's see. Now do it. Yeah, now just try. Oh, by the way, if I could remind people,
If you don't mind.
yeah, always try and use the keys. Try not to use that toolbar on the left. So try to learn the keystrokes because it's so much faster. You know, N is pencil, I is eyedropper, A is for the white cursor. I don't know why it's A, but anyway it is, right? V is the black cursor. So Z is for the close-up thing.
P is pencil.
N is pencil. Yeah.
P is pencil.
N.
N. That's terrible.
I know. It's like,
That is terrible.
well, that's because I
That
don't
way
know.
my drawing. It's like
Yeah. there
I'm
you
using
go.
a mouse. Is that okay? That's good enough, right?
Yep. Well,
I would.
no, but it's good enough for right now. Yeah. So, and actually, you know, there's a lot of ways of doing this. You can just go in and rough them all in very quickly and then go back and clean it up. That's fine too, you know?
Yeah.
There's no reason you can't go in and I'm, you know, I'll be doing that also as I go in and grab all of those things, you know, make all my shapes, and then I'll go close up and grab the white cursor, the A key, double click and just start moving those points around so they're a little more exacting. But you have to click on
So I
point.
double click outside. Just when you say point, then on the not on the line here. Oh, here.
No, the points are the little square boxes.
Oh.
That's a line. It gives you the handles. That's fine too. But if you want to move a point, you have to click on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
here.
Yep. The anchor. Sorry, you should call it the anchor.
And then pull. Oh,
Anchor
and then
point.
pull here.
Yep. And then pull it to wherever you want it. Yeah, yeah.
Super. You know what? That's good enough for now.
We're building skills. Accuracy will come later. Right, right. Yeah.
Ruth, how are you doing with your AI? I'm the worst at it, Ruth. I'm so bad.
One second, I'm in great pain because I have here the file that I have to open. It's called 03. No, I'm sorry. 3DE. That's the one. I open it. It's 3IDE.
Are you on a Mac or a PC, Ruth?
Mac. What
Oh.
PC? I only work on Mac
Right.
for many
So
years.
if you're opening a file, if that's what you're doing,
yes,
it's large homestead base map exercise blank.
I have
homestead.
that. 1 second. I have that directory.
Yep. That's what you
Okay.
click on that and open it up in Illustrator. And everything should be there.
Exactly, that's what was my assumption. 1 second here. I have it here in a, okay. So that's large home base, exactly. But it came, when I downloaded, it came down as a directory, right?
Directory is something that you'll find in the Finder. So I don't know what the terminology means in Illustrator.
Right, one second. It's an HT. No, I have it in Illustrator. I think that's something here that,
Do you see Michael's screen?
what is Michael's screen? That's Michael's screen, yes?
Yeah.
Large
Oh.
home, exactly. Just a second. Mine it's not MHAI.
No,
Ah,
I
that's-
named it. I named mine.
Okay,
So the reason is, you know, you want to maybe keep the original. You want to go
Right,
back and start
right,
again.
I
Original
see.
blank and have
this
this
is-
new one. Yeah.
but I don't understand. I actually know what is the catch here. You cannot download a directory. It has to come as a file. So that's, you know what, let me do something like that.
Okay.
I can see what happened here. I'll start from the beginning.
Okay. I'm going to stop your share, Michael, or you can. It's fun to watch you work, though.
It's horrendous, Dan.
It's okay.
Oh, and I've lost it. Did it go? Oh, wait, where was that? Oh, I've lost it. Oh, there you go. Three shapes, but I should probably name in the
To me, it's come with a ping. It comes as a ping place. Oh,
You-
is
you-
that- oh,
Ruth, you know what happened to me when I downloaded it from the chat box, and then
Yes.
it kind of opens up somewhere. Then you got to hit download again. And it's a download to it'll download to you like your downloads on your desktop, and then you can just open it in AI and save it. That's kind of the methodology that I use.
Probably something going on there. That's
Yeah, sorry, we can't see your.
But it does come in the
Mhm.
it does come in the name.
Mhm.
But you have to actually download it, right?
Yeah, you
but
got
the
to
name should
download it on your
remain.
in your download folder into your Finder and open it from there. Right. Or I think it's also, yeah, I think it's just a link. I don't think I didn't actually load the file, although I might have into WhatsApp, don't recall. But I want to hear from Chase and Chloe. I don't know, Robert, are you working on this? Yao, are you working on this?
Yeah, I'm working on it so I'm doing it on a different map.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good. I'm just expanding some canopy and setting up to try out some functional spaces and some bubbles.
Okay.
Yeah, so I can share that when I get something going here.
Okay. So all we're doing right now is these ecological spaces, right? That's what we see on this map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I meant.
And then each of those spaces has an ecological function, and there are lots of things going on in there. And then eventually we are going to basically try to put some, those spaces to work, right? Or I shouldn't say that. That's kind of paternal. We're not putting nature to work. We are working with nature. We are enhancing it. All of those great things.
Yeah.
All right. So here's what I'd like you to do at this point. We're going to move on to the next thing. Is we're going to collect all of those into a new layer like I did. You know, highlight one of the lines at the top of all of your shapes that you made in the layers. Use the shift key and collect, go all the way to the bottom of the bottom one that you have, and then go up into the menu and go collect in new layers. So you get them all in one box like I did with patches. That's what I called it for now. Those are all my ecological patches. And then we're going to go to Canopy.
So it's, sorry, it's window collect new layers. I'm sorry, how do you navigate to collect new layers?
So highlight by using your cursor, just click on the line.
Yep,
Don't click on the ends or anything.
Yep,
Shift down and
I've
click the rest
highlighted,
of
yeah,
them.
I got that.
Yeah. And
Yep,
then
I
up
got
in the
that.
top, it's called collect a new layer.
Let me just move the,
Yeah, once you get all the zoom stuff out of the way.
yeah. And you go up to the top, where? Damn.
Yeah, it's those lines. The menu at the
Oh,
top.
the lines, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
Still can't find it, but that's okay.
So I just went and collected them all and went up to collect a new layer. And then I renamed it.
Gotcha. It was hit those, yeah, those layers. Yes, so
Yeah.
defaulted 23, and we'll just call it patches. Yeah, thank you.
Sure. And then once you have that, because you don't want to mess it up, lock it. And right now we're going to turn it off because we got something else we're going to do. Okay. And as you might imagine is these things in vegetation also are going to be in layers that make sense, right? So your turf and ground cover, that stuff's always going to be on the bottom. Shrub somewhere in the middle, canopy, I'm going to bring that to the top because that's the top. And even these patches could be all the way at the bottom because any kind of plants you put in, things like that, you're going to want them to be on the top on this. Otherwise, those colors will mute the colors of your plants that you're putting in. So I like to just drag it to the bottom. It's locked. Wonderful. I got this now. I'm going to turn that off. So we're going to practice doing a speed canopy. I think it was inspired by Michael's comment last week. Yeah. It's like speed dating, but we're speed tree canopying. And if I zoom in, this is the kind of the neat part now, just particular to this for many, many kinds of landscapes. Oh, wow, look at the trail going through here. You can even see the road, you can see the tire marks. That's good. We have to keep track of that because there's actually a path running through, at least once, running through the woods. And by the way, if you drive a gator or anything through the woods, there's a path there now. It's going to be there a while. So what's neat about this, and I'm going to Canopy Layer, and we're going to start with Ellipse tool. Here we go. And of course, L is for ellipse. You know, it's like nothing ever really makes sense with this, but and M is for rectangle. I don't know. Who knows what language it started in. So now we're going to make all the canopies. Now you can see in the picture here, these are all birch trees, poplar, probably all birch. Look how white they are. Great. Very easy to see where they are, and there's hundreds of them. There's also these evergreen trees. Could be tamarack, could be white cedar, kind of hard to tell. Tamarack is probably going to be out in the wet areas. The cedar where it's drier, higher elevations. But each one of these little green spots, look at this one here, has a center. So it's shift, drag, option, shift. See how then it goes from the center? And I'm just going to cover it up. I'm going to start in the center of the tree, go to the edge, I'm done. My first one is white just because that's what the color I was on. I'm going to go over to my foliage. Pick out a nice green for that. I can also use the eyedropper and I could pick a green off the landscape if I wanted to. That would be fine too. But I think I'm going to go with a little bit darker green. And this first one is going to set you up for the rest of them too. So that is now basically my symbol for trees, although I'm not going to make it a symbol because there's other things we want to do with this. So I'm going to go through now with the ellipse tool, the L key, as we just learned. Shift Option, start at the center and drag. Start at the center and drag. Boom, 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 boom. I'm using a pencil, very easy. Pen tool, pen tool, pen tool, pen tool, just like that. There's one here, there's one there. So I'm just finding the center, dragging out until I cover it up. And there's my canopy start. Those are all the evergreens. If I want to go do some more, just use the space bar to get the grab, the handle or the hand to grab and move things around. There's a few up here. Let go and I've got my tool back. Shift Option, drag, 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 drag. And now I'm just basically, I'm just scouting the area for more evergreen trees. And now, of course, please remember, this is at 20%, so they're a little harder to see on the screen. If I was smarter, I might just go back in my layers and turn on my aerial picture at 100%. Make it easier on my eyes. Go ahead. Maybe that was a sneeze. Right, so I'm using the Shift and Option key, the ellipse tool, and I'm just hitting all the evergreen trees wherever I can see them. Well, there's a really nice one there. And usually in the canopies, there isn't a lot of this. Most of the time, it's pretty homogeneous, you might say. So we pretty much have just like one circle that goes for all of them. But I'm getting here also, I'm getting like a couple different kinds of evergreens. Look at that. These are now much greener down here than they were up in this other area. If I want to, if I use the eyedropper, I can change that green. See how I clicked on a different green? Down like that, and I can change the green. My tool will remember that. Ellipse tool. Shift Option, and now I got a different green and I'm doing these other trees. That'll make a nice difference in your canopy, right?
What does the Shift Option do?
So you're watching me make this circle here. If I don't press any keys, it starts and I get this sort of odd sort of blob, not easy to control. If I use the Shift, it makes it a perfect circle.
So
Right?
hold Shift while you're clicking.
Right. But it's going proportional from an angle. Shift Option makes it come from the center. That's why we like to use Shift Option for the trees. Because then all I have to do is find the middle of the tree, Shift Option, and then stop as soon as I've covered it up. Just like that.
That's it's Shift. Is it Shift Alt on the Mac? See?
Yeah, Shift Alt, I think, on the PC.
Oh yeah, that's totally easier.
Yeah, Shift Alt on the PC. I used to have that written in Sharpie and they seem to rub off on my fingers. I don't have that anymore. I try, but my Mac doesn't seem to want to let the keys be written on PC commands for some reason.
Michael, how do you delete a circle on the PC?
Delete
Michael?
a circle?
Yeah.
Just highlight it and click delete. If you have a white cursor, you
simple.
click on anything and you just hit the delete key.
Super simple.
Yeah, super simple. So now you can see I'm just going through and I'm just selecting L is for ellipse, Shift Option, find the center, kind of intuitive. There's a center there, pretty much the center there, right? And I'm filling in this whole thing. Now, The idea is to not look at the tree, look at the next tree. It's like playing chess. You're creating a pattern. And so I can go very, very quickly because I know where I'm going to stop, and I go on to the next tree with my eyes before I'm even done. Right? So I'm just quickly doing this canopy. And I'm not going to do these out here. These are totally different kind of trees. So I'm just going to leave those for now.
So you're not worrying about the circles matching up with the size of the actual trees.
Not that concerned, no.
Cool.
I want to
okay.
cover it up, yes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, first of all, the trees aren't round. And I'm just generally signifying where there is a tree from the center of it, and the rest will be just fine. And there's probably lots of like even little trees under here, wherever it's green, just kind of filling that in. And don't even worry about the transparency. We can do that later. What you really want to do is just hit all the trees, making the circles. And when you think you got it covered, then go back and collect them all and put them in a layer. And then you can change the transparency. You can change the color. That's what's really nice about getting them in a group, of course.
How are you changing the size of the circles so fast?
I'm dragging and stopping.
Okay.
So click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. Boom, boom,
Okay.
boom, boom. So if you're using a mouse, it's the same thing. On the trackpad, what is it, a trackpad? You kind of like push harder and drag. What do you do with the track? 2 fingers? You know what I mean? How does
Sorry,
that work?
Dan. I don't know.
Yeah, you click and then drag with your other finger.
Oh, so you want your thumb on there maybe, and then push down and then click, I see. Or you say doing like 2 fingers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of finger coordination there.
Okay.
You zoom in.
Stepping back real quick, how did you separate the water and the land into its own layer?
Dan, you're muted.
Still muted, Dan.
Oh, well, Dan, you're muted.
I don't know why that happened. Sorry. Okay. Spacebar problems again. Yeah, I'm in Illustrator using the spacebar, and then all of a sudden Zoom thinks I'm wanting to be muted too. So this area here, if you remember, if you can kind of see the line there, I'll go turn off my 100%. This is a kind of a marsh wetland area. I did my pencil around it, and then I did it in wetlands, which is under the water layer. So in water layer, I have a wetlands group, and that's where I did that. You can do it, you know, obviously if something gets out of the wrong layer, you can just drag it into the right one. And one thing we haven't done yet, because we're not to that point, is going back into this and now looking for the actual streams and the water flow. And that would be the line tool again with the pencil, but creating lines, getting like blue streams, things like that. But that can come later. Does that answer your question?
Well, so when I have my wetland layers selected, how do I, because I tried right clicking, or like, how do I separate them into their own layer? Like you did, so you locked them away.
Oh, right. So you see these 3 paths here in water?
Uh-huh.
Click. If I shift click and they're blue.
Yeah.
Right. So I shift and click on those 3 and make them blue. Then go up here and say collect in new layer. Right. This says layer 25 now. And then I name that.
So that moves.
Okay.
So that
I
moves
found it
all of the different water shapes into like, so if you were to click the eye, they would all pop up instead of them all being individual eyes you need to click, right?
Right, right. But
So
there's a
we're-
difference too, by the way. So like if I have I'm gonna open up Marsh. Right, so if I click on the right, of course, it selects all of those things. So that's kind of like a group. Yeah, what
So
was
we'll
your
need to
question,
do-
Chloe?
So we'll need to do that here soon with the canopy, with all these
Right.
different trees, because right now on my screen, it's just like showing canopy and then all these different circles. So we'll
Yep.
do the highlight and move.
Yeah, so you can see I was doing a lot of these different green ones. I'm trying to get down to where, here it is. Okay, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but you see on my list where it changes to a different tree, different
Mhm.
color? If I click on the bottom one, scroll all the way to the top, shift and click on the top one, I can collect those all into a new layer.
Love it.
And now all those trees are together.
And
I
then you can
think-
name it like birch or whatever.
Exactly, exactly.
Love that. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that those are, we'll just say they're not. Let's just say they're juniper, right? And these other ones, it's like, oh, those all look like white pine. So I'm going to collect all those too. Collect a new layer, and I'm going to call that. Let's see, it said layer 27, white pine. Now, as I'm working in Canopy, I can just keep making these symbols like this ellipse that shows there, and then put them in there later. That didn't work out very well. Here we go. And put them in. So organization can happen at any time. And if you want to, of course, you can click on the layer that you want things to be put into, or just do it later. Either way, it's probably faster, but a lot of times I'm going in between trees doing different colors all the time. So now back out here a little bit. So you can kind of see the patches, right? The different types of trees. Again, now once you turn on your, the other patches that we have, here we go. You can see how it starts to develop the different, you can kind of see the plant systems, the colors are changing, those kinds of things. You know, it makes for a really nice map, right? And it also shows the different species and helps with creating a good presentation with a lot of information. Right, that looks good. So I just want, and the last thing on this one, so we could see there were, you know, a couple different evergreens with different colors. I know this is tamarack in here, and that would be another one I'd want to do. And a lot of people might just go in here and make a blob and call it green and call it done, which is great. But I like to stick with a certain pattern of work. And even though it might seem a little crazy, I'm going to go through every one of these birch trees because I can go really quickly, and I can do that because I'm listening to some tunes and I got something to drink. And it really makes me, you know, I just want to make this look really nice when it's done. And then I still get those patterns and it looks good. And plus the birch trees don't have anything on them. You know, it's just the white stuff. So if I put a green circle over it, it'll look nice. So say I'm going to do all the birch trees, right? Come in here, shift option, cover that tree. And I'm going to do all the birch trees now. They're going to have their own layer by the time I get done. I'm going to change the color, go to foliage. And they might even be quaking aspen, but I think they're mostly birch. Pick out maybe a more of a neutral greenish tone for them, something that's a little bit different. Something like that. And now my tool, remember, shift option. And I'm just grabbing the center of the tree, dragging out to cover it. And now I'm just doing all the birch trees in here. Now you might say that this is pretty tedious, and you probably wouldn't be too far off. It depends upon the tool you're using. But the other thing you're doing while you're doing these trees, especially, I'll turn this back on, at 100%, and even more when you have better resolution, is you're actually inspecting the land at the same time. Look at all these animal trails through the marsh, right? You can actually almost tell how deep that grass is by the trails running through here, right? Probably from all the rodents, the coyotes, you name it, raccoons, everything that's crossing this land, the deer. That tells you a lot of what's going on in this area, right? So I just continue to do my birch trees. And while I'm doing that, I'm also looking at the land. If I was doing 160 acres, I might not do this like you saw with that one I did in Texas. I just used image trace, but of course that's a totally different landscape and you couldn't do it here. There's just too much detail and too much diversity. So I'm going along and doing this, and look at this red tree. You see that there's like all of a sudden there's a red, and there's a couple here and a couple there. That's interesting. I wonder if they're oak, or why did they pop up like there, and now all of a sudden I see more of them. That's interesting to note. So maybe I want to highlight that when I go to the property and go, let's go look and see what those different trees are. Right. So as long as you're doing this detailed work, and I'm putting in all these trees, and as you can see, you know, it can go fairly quickly. But now I'm over here and look at this little wetland area. Again, there's a trail going across. Did I highlight this in my patches? Yep, I did. There's a little brown there. That's good. But I'm getting all of the detail now that's helping me, and I'm actually getting a lot more going on in there too. Oops, yeah. Oh, I don't know if you remember that. I clicked on marsh, and now look where I put all of my birch trees. That was great. Hundreds of them. That was a mistake. But easily corrected because I'm going to shift and click up, bottom, and top line. Collect a new layer. Call it birch until we know better. And then drag it down to my canopy where I know it should be. Then I can turn off the marsh and it'll show up. Okay. Oh yeah, so I wanted to turn this off. Yep. So now we have birch trees in here. We have evergreen, birch, juniper, white pine. And it's a really interesting pattern that you're seeing develop here with the different colors in the trees. And then when you turn on your patches, you even have so much more information. So deep in ecological design, really understanding the landscape, right? And a rock solid base map that you're putting together there, that in itself is going to be beautiful artwork, but also hugely helpful in deciding what's going to happen in these areas, because we already know what the different kind of plants are, what kind of habitat it is. Get into a plant database, and as you can imagine, I'll make a little box here, but there's going to be a plant list for this, a plant list for that, a plant list up here, one over here. This is the agricultural field, right? So you're basically developing your own kind of base map report and a place to kind of identify what's going to go on in these circles and in these areas. And where we live, and probably maybe where you live too, each one of these patches has some kind of plant community name, some kind of ecological name. And those plants will all be listed. So if you find certain ferns in one of these areas, and then you can go and find out what ecological community they're a part of, you could probably narrow it down fairly easily to where you're working. And that will open up a whole nother plant list of possibilities to look in that too. Okay. So I'm still on birch. Zooming up here. Making sure that I'm on the right layer. Got my right colors on, shift option. I'm just making all these circles like this. Someday with artificial intelligence or a good intern, somebody will do this for you. Just like that, they're all in birch. Now, as you know, I can select all these. See how they all get selected? I have all my birch trees selected that I put in. Now I can go do a blanket transparency to all of them at the same time, knock them back. Now I get a little bit of the green, or the white coming through, I should say, from the tree. All of that. I can also maybe finesse the colors a little bit, play with a couple different ones that might not be so much in your face. I kind of like that one better. Back to our layers. Close that layer. Looking really nice. Now, by the way, I'm just going to click on this image down here. This is at 29%. Maybe, see how you can, like, if we go all the way up, it's 100%, can't see any of our work. Go all the way down, makes a nice illustration, kind of cool. Generally, it's all very organic. But you can kind of find that sweet spot where you're getting good detail of the aerial, but you're not losing your colors. So look at that, even in about 40%, that's fine, right? At about 30, you lose a little bit. 40, 39%, that's a nice, now we see the detail and we see our work on here. And I think that's important. Just kind of nail that in once. And now you have a nice detailed aerial in the background, but you could still see your work on the front of this. If I go into juniper as a group, oops, excuse me. Select all the junipers. I'm going to put my transparency out here so I can see it. Separate it out. There we go. These are all highlighted. I can use the Z key and zoom in. And now I can play with the transparency on all of those. Enough for their popping off and give us some detail in the background. Very nice. So that's the juniper. I'm going to lock that one unless I want to work on it. Let's look at the white pine. All the white pine is selected. Don't need that at 100%. Right? Still good. Good color. We've got some nice work there. What are these up here? Yeah, those are the birch. Those are all down too. So this is an actual design that we did a couple of years ago. I think you can see this on my website, the finished work. I know you can. And but this is basically going through, and that's how you get your patches first. And really 5 acres, 10 acres, doesn't matter the size of the property. Get the pastures, get the woodlands, the turf, even around the houses here, you know, do the grass. And of course, here's our great roof line. Spend lots of fun time there. There's a little car. All these things are great. And you're getting these things too. But even here, the turf area, that's a patch, number of them. Actually, this is one patch in the front yard with a garden in the center of it, right? There's another birch tree, and then you can see these conifers over here, over there also. So each one of these could also be another patch space. And if you could imagine if this was only this lot right here, if it was just these buildings and only that corner, you would still do the same thing. The marshes, the wetlands, you can see the stream coming through here. The animals are using it, the water flowing through the property. When it's frozen in the wintertime here, the animals use all these stream beds. That's their paths to get around. And then as soon as the snow melts, they got to go back out into other areas, but it's a lot easier to walk in those then. But look at all the birch trees, conifers, birch, and then you could probably see some darker ones in here. And then I know there's some some pretty good oak trees. And once you can, I think through aerials too, you know, certain people could probably recognize these trees just by their color and their texture, right? I mean, once, if you were there and you saw these, you go, oh yeah, that looks like this, it looks like that. Probably could even identify these with higher resolution. This was off of Google Earth, or no, this is from the county. But on our aerial drone picture, so much easier to see. It was in the middle of the summer though. So all the trees, the birch had all leaves on them. But you could probably identify all these trees from the sky, which for botany and for knowing what the plants are was kind of neat, I think, to be able to do that. Okay. So now you can imagine as you go through and you do all the birch trees, you do all the conifers, you do all your patches in here. This graphic it's got this natural sort of, I think, really interesting patch dynamics. It's just the composition of it just looks so great right off the bat because you're just following nature's natural patterns. And there's a rhythm to this. There's like, you know, almost, you know, as all these things come together, it's just interesting how they intermix.
It looks like camo.
Like what?
Camo.
Oh, yeah, like camo. Yeah.
Cool. That's, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Which, of course, you know, in a forest, it's almost like a repeating pattern. What do they call that repeating? What is that geometrically? Not a matrix, but
Fractal?
fractals. Exactly. Yeah. It's like a fractal that keeps repeating as you get zoom in and zoom in. These could be all sorts of things, right? Soil types, you name it. Yeah, it's kind of neat about that. So the last thing we would do on this then, so I'm going to lock my existing vegetation. Got that done. And then I'm going to lock the marsh here. Lock my wetlands. But we have one more thing on here that we really want to look at, and that is water flow. And I'll turn off the 100% one. But you can kind of tell, see the spaces in between. You can see where the water flows because plants don't grow there. It's too wet. You can see the marsh. These little channels and canals going through. Excuse me. Sorry about that. You can almost see the water and how it's going to move between here. And of course, being on the land is going to make a big difference with that too. So I'm on my water layer, and it's, you know, some things that need to be checked out, but I know that the water flows right here. Let's see, I'm going to make first. I've got my tool. I got nothing selected here. So I'm going to go up to Art and Illustration, grab a nice blue, put it as the stroke over here on the left. Make sure that it's the stroke. We'll just make it 0.1 centimeters and see what it comes out to be. But look at that, you can see a flow right through here. Right? And make that a little bit obviously bigger. Here we go. And like anything else, it just start to map out where the water is flowing. Now I actually know that it goes here, there, all the way across and off the property. There's also this wetland and these marshes. These actually flow through here.
See, sorry, what were you saying?
These are the water flow on the property. So the streams.
Okay. This is a
right?
wall color.
Yep. So now I'm on the water layer, and I'm just adding paths just to kind of play with that. I might need to have, like, go into Google Earth and see different times of the year, because this is pretty dry time of other areas, or just the fact that you know that, look at that opening there. This is wet marsh going through here. You can just tell from the trees that the water goes through here and then just heads right like that. Oops. I touched the other line and it went away. So now I'm playing with my water stream beds, and then it's going to take a little more looking on this. Now, you can see this. I know that this right here, unfortunately, I know for a fact that in the springtime, the water flows right through the barn area, right into that marsh, just like that. So we have our patches for, ecological systems, plant communities, things like that. We're putting in the canopy overhead, the trees, those kinds of things, and their groupings. And then going back and putting in the water. And then the fact that this right here is open water. So I make a circle and then flip that over on the left so that it's a fill. And these are all solid. So we're just kind of doing the work, and we can come back later and fix the width, make them more, maybe some of these get wider, or they have open water in these areas, and we want to check that out. Check that out too. So I think that's fairly good. You can kind of see like there's these little openings where water flow might be. You don't want to just randomly be putting things in. But now you can kind of see how the water flows across this property and out, right? There's going to be, that's a design driver, how the water is leaving the property. What does it mean by the time it gets across this property line? It's like it's gone, right? You've lost your chance to use this water on the landscape once it's off the property line. It's just not there anymore. And there may be, in some of these boggy areas, like some times of the year, this might actually have open water. I can make the line, use the eyedropper. Or back over in these other areas, some of these areas might have open water, and you might want to mark that so that you can keep track of those places. Let's see here. So that's kind of, getting these things in. These are under the water things. So I'm just going to leave them like that. Those are in there. Turn off my 100%.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is it worth doing this water mapping several times of the year so one knows when it's more water, less, be aware?
Yeah.
According to what one wants to plant. And if so, if there is a season that there is a lot of water, how to create some storage for the water? That's another plan, no?
Right.
So keep as much water on the site as possible.
Yeah, it's very, obviously it depends upon the landscape that's here. So here I didn't want to use I'm not going to use it's still remembering the property line. I just want to use a dash line. So this might be a way that you say this is a seasonal. This is flowing all the time. It might even be that somewhere in here this gets wider. What we don't have on here yet, a whole nother part of this, is the topography, which is going to, like you can see the upland areas, the water's flowing down here. You kind of get an idea of all these bumps in here and these rises, because there's different trees. So water collection on here, the bogs, all those kinds of things for water storage is great. Now, we kind of default to that. We want to store as much water on here as possible. And that's a great idea, except this is already an ecological system, right? So anything we do on here is going to have a huge impact on what's already been going on for, let's say, the last 50 years. So if we're going to change anything here hydrologically, you really have to be careful of where that's going to happen. Now, on the other hand, say there's a little area over here and you wanted to dig a pond and it fills up from this stream bed. Maybe for one season, as this fills up and gets to the water table raised, it might lower the water going off your property, but it's not going to affect everything else that's up above it. So to create a water feature is one thing. To, let's just say, modify drainage on an existing landscape, that's also obviously totally different. And of course, this is about context, and this is Minnesota, where we have 30 inches of rain, right? And we're in a wetland. So water probably isn't that much an issue to store as it might be to collect and use for it. Like maybe he wants to take water out of here and do irrigation. That would be a totally different thing, right? Because you certainly don't want to take it out of the top of your property. But if you can create a basin down here and collect water and then pump it out before it leaves the property, that might be okay to some degree. Ponds
So,
around the house up here, this area, which is fairly high. Actually, the highest point of the property is like right where these trees are. Water feature would be very nice in here. And actually, this area between the buildings is where we were going to put a pond, because the water is going right through between the barns here. There's so much water coming through that we thought it'd be great to kind of collect it, create a pond here that would be very useful to the landscape, getting the water off the buildings. It's one of those things, but we're not doing it in the habitat. Right. So the
It's a
last
lot
thing
of
I'll talk about, but we're not going to do, is access. Right. Look at the path through here, and it might take a little bit of work, but there's actually, you can see the ATV road that he kind of has going through here. And if you watch closely, sometimes you can see where those paths are. Or you might have to look at a different season for those. But you see where we see them up in here, and you'll see some road tracks through here. Those are what we would mark, just like we did with the water on a different layer, which is called access. And I'm doing it anyway, even though I said I wouldn't. We grab the pen tool and go, oh yeah, look at, there's a path that goes like this, like here, comes down, and then of course, I'm going to change that color. We'll make that more of a brown. And for me, my pattern, and from the key and everything too, is if it's paved, if it's hard surface, it's solid. If it's just a path, right, a trail, it's dots. So the driveway here would be a solid, but these things up here are all dots because they're not hardscapes at all. They're just paths, trails, basically. Paths and trails. Well, great. That's a lot. I hope that was reasonably fun.
Super fun.
more than that.
But
Yeah, yeah.
Dan, you have a great eye for the land, right? And I'm kind of looking at my laptop with a smaller image. So just feeling out what's marsh, what's this, what's that. Is it intuitive, or you drill down
It really is pattern recognition after a while. I think textures, colors, and I've been to this site, right? And so now I've learned what tamarack looks from the sky in the middle of a bog. I can't really see, of course, the the cranberries and things like that, but at least I'm getting the patterns and understanding. The birch trees, obvious, of course, I'm from Minnesota, so I know that's what they are, or poplar. So it is kind of a matter of getting a good map, walking around and getting to learn what that is. And at any time you guys wanted to do that, I'd be happy to go over your aerial with you and see. Of course, in this case, decent, not great, but decent resolution, right? You wouldn't be able to, like, I think it was that Lucas was working with something from Albania, pretty tough, right? Could barely see the buildings and the walls. So that's where it gets hard. But if you have decent resolution, you can kind of figure out these plant communities, the landscape, the different types of ecology. And I think that's long-term, very, very helpful and worth the time.
Thank you.
Are you using, or is it advisable to use that app, Picture This, kind of to recognize the names of trees?
Oh yeah, iNature, I think it is. iNature.
I know one that's called Picture This.
I use Picture This and I really like it.
I think so too, because you get familiar with both names. The popular.
Yeah, okay.
And,
that one has the best algorithm, like, because some of them you have to wait and they'll send it to a team of people and they identify it. But Picture This has a really good algorithm, and so it gives you instant results. And out of like Google Lens and all these other ones, I think it has one of the best the best algorithms.
Okay.
Yeah, Chase and I are always comparing because I use Google Lens and he uses picture this, and we'll get different results. And I don't
Really?
know, it's nice sometimes to use multiple if it's a hard thing to identify.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but
Oh,
at
okay.
least it's a good companion to work with.
And you're doing pictures of leaves, right? Or whole plants?
Oh, all plants. I don't know. I'm now learning about trees that are familiar, are amicable with the shore, with the water, with the winds, and with the moisture from the ocean.
Mhm.
I'm always most surprised when I see a vegetation that looks so flamboyant close to the ocean.
Mhm.
Because I know it's hard to grow, but there are some that
Oh, yeah.
work.
So that, as I could ask, so those are both apps. They're not websites, right? They're just apps for your phone?
It's an app, yeah.
Okay.
Almonds and sea grapes do well at ocean.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everyone. And I'll be on here for a little while. I'm going to stop the recording and we'll get this I'm catching up and getting things on YouTube. Then I'll get them up onto the course page. But great. And we'll be back Wednesday. It'd be great to see what you have. If you can practice this on your own site,
Yeah.
this file, it'd be really nice to see what kind of patterns you come up with. And all we're looking at, as you can see here, is just the land, communities, the landscape, the canopy. And if you want to get into water or access, that's great too.
Mhm.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
It is,
Dan, so you drew the lines for the access in the water with the pencil tool, right? And then how did you change the